Welcome to Relatively Weird, the podcast where a couple of cousins get together and talk about everything weird. I am Kim.
I am Jilli.
And we're going to get into it. So I'm finally back on my true crime bullshit.
I don't think you've done a whole lot.
No, I haven't. And you know why? Actually, researching them is harder than I thought.
Why?
But anyway, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
Because you get a lot of news articles, which don't give you really a lot of the meat because they can only include so much. The police only tell them so much.
Depending on how old the crime is.
Right. Segue. Today's crime occurred on December 11th, 2002. I'm just going to jump into it. I'm not going to tell you, like, this is the blah, blah, blah of blah, blah, blah. We're just going to go.
Okay.
It occurs in West Lothian, Fauldhouse, Scotland. So it's in Scotland.
Okay. I'm like, yeah, I know where that is, totally.
We are talking about Thomas McKendrick. He is 21 years old. Not super social. He's really only has, at this time, one really close friend. And his name is Allan Menzies. He's 22. Thomas and Allan, actually, one of the things they had in common they were avid ferreters.
Ferreters.
Keeper of ferrets.
Okay, yeah.
That's all. That was just a fact. It doesn't really factor into the story, but I thought it was interesting. Anyway, Thomas is unemployed. He lives with his mom and his sister. He is receiving benefits checks, though. So, though he does not currently have a job, he does have an income. On December 11th, 2002, Thomas's mother says that Tom left the house without saying goodbye, but she did overhear him on the phone with Allan. So she knew Thomas was going to Allan's house, but that was kind of it. Thomas never came home that day.
Could have saw that coming.
So his mother reported him missing. Now, again, December 11th, we're coming up to the holidays. Busy time. Of course, Allan was interviewed. He was the last person that anybody knew he was with. So the police interview Allan. He says, yep, we were hanging out, but me and Thomas did get into a bit of an argument, so Thomas left to go home, and that was the last time he'd seen him. The officers, of course, asked more about the argument, and Allan is like, no, it wasn't really a big deal. It wasn't like a heated argument. It was just an argument, but enough that he left, and I haven't talked to him since, but Allan doesn't really seem to think it's weird. You know, when you take a couple days from a friend, you get into it a little bit, and you're like, oh, we're gonna just chill for a bit. And the police believed him. They asked him to keep them updated if he heard anything. Obviously, if he talked to him. At this point, of course, there's a missing 21-year-old. He's 21. He doesn't have a job, but he does have an income. He could feasibly take off if he felt like it.
Yeah.
So I think in their minds, that was a real possibility. He just sort of chose to leave. But the family said, listen, he would never do that. We're also, now it's the holiday season, and he's not even spoken to us. Why wouldn't he call?
Yeah. But then again, why would you leave on a whim without saying anything either?
Right.
That's still weird.
Right. Especially a kid who's doesn't really seem like he's one to do that. Like, I'm just going to go and be on my own, and he's living with his mom and sister.
Yeah. That's where the other, like, because this happens a lot in true crime, I think.
All the time.
Where the police don't know the person. Mm-hmm. So, but they can't sound the alarm every single time.
Right.
It's just not possible. So it's like, but also, if the family was like, no, they wouldn't do that. I'm telling you, they wouldn't do. You would, if you were missing, yeah, you're an adult. I guess you could just leave it all.
Right.
But you wouldn't do that.
Right.
You just wouldn't.
Well, and even at that, right, that example, you're like, okay, so if she did, something's wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a reason, a mental break even. So,
Yes.
you know, exactly. Agreed. I get their standpoint too, but however, the police's feelings changed a bit once they discovered that Thomas's benefits checks hadn't been picked up for weeks.
Aha.
Now,
Was he getting them at his house?
he had to go get them.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think it's... I don't know.
Because I'm like,
if
yeah,
we have
duh.
like an equivalent.
Right. Who's at his house?
And he's not here.
He's just checking the mailbox and running away.
No, he had to go someplace. So now at one point during these approximately 6 weeks, there's a 6-week window where Thomas is missing. At some point in the 6-week window that Thomas is missing, Thomas's mother sees Allan out at a store. Fine. It's, I assume, a pretty small area.
Allan didn't leave.
No, right. He's around. But what was weird was that he asked her, do you think that this particular cleaning product will get out bloodstains?
You're asking the mother of a person.
A missing person,
Yeah,
yes.
Okay.
And because she's a kind, polite human being, she answered him and then promptly went home and told the police.
Good.
Yes, good choice. Police, as we'll find out, police re-interview Allan, and he sticks with his original story, but they have enough concern that they're like, that's fine, but we're still going to take a look around the area. So they start searching the vicinity around his house in the surrounding woods. And on January 8th, a bag with clothing is found. Bloody clothing.
In the woods?
In the woods. And now, of course, they're like, okay, he's definitely not just a missing person. This is likely a homicide. Allan overdoses the day after the clothes are found and ends up in a hospital. Now, it's unclear from really anyone's standpoint whether it was intentional or not. But of course, they're like, you okay? How come?
Yeah.
And he's still at this point of saying, I still don't know. And I guess you could assume it's like his only friend and now something terrible's happened. I suppose he could say like, I'm so devastated, even if it was intentional. I suppose that could be your
The
argument.
blood thing is just weird. I don't know.
That's, yes, concerning. On January 18th of 2003, Constable Kenneth Gray was conducting a search in the woods, and he spots a forearm and hand sticking out of a shallow grave. They obviously investigate, and the body is uncovered, and it is, in fact, Thomas. Allan is arrested then on January 22nd, so like 4 days later.
4 days. Well, yeah, I suppose.
They gotta get DNA and
Yeah.
stuff back because 6 weeks.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Almost immediately, Allan confessed, but he had an interesting story to go with it. So we're going to go back a little bit, and now we're going to learn more about Allan. Allan Menzies. Unfortunate name.
So I was going to say it's a rough last name.
Kind of a fitting name, well, you'll find out why.
Okay.
So Allan, like Thomas, not super social. He was described as a quiet kid. He never really had very many friends. He kept to himself. He was bullied quite a bit in school. That happens to the weirdos like us. And one day, he was all set with that. And at 14 years old, he brought a knife to school and he stabbed a fellow student who had been doing some of the bullying. That student survived. And Allan was sentenced to 3 years at St. Mary's in Glasgow.
Okay.
Glasgow.
So he has a record.
Yes. Now, this is not like a... So this, to me, seems like a juvie, like juvenile hall.
Yeah. Well, or whatever the equivalent is in Scotland.
Right. He did try to hang himself with his pajamas while he served his time.
Okay.
And both parents claim he came out different than when he went in. Because unfortunately, like I say, it was like juvie. He's being punished, not treated. Do you have a kid who...
Yeah.
There's potential here for mental health treatment, and that's not what this was. So when he came out, they said he'd spend all day in his room. So he went in at 14, he comes out at 17. So he's spending all day in his room, the curtain's drawn, he's not really super responsive with his parents. He had a hard time handling change. It would definitely cause him to panic. His mom claimed after the fact, we find out later, that he had tried to overdose somewhere around 4 to 5 times separately with Tylenol.
Sorry, when was that?
After he came back from
Okay. So that's also
Jilli.
Not a weird thing for him. Not weird. It is. Okay.
So it's the thing. Yes, he has a history
He has
of
done
self-harm.
it before. Yes. Okay.
For sure. His mother did say, now at all points you're going like, hello, is anybody asking anybody for help?
Yeah.
So mom did tell the authorities again after the fact that she did try to get her doctor involved because she knew that there was something wrong with Allan. But beyond that, we don't know anything. She didn't clarify to say that the doctor recommended him therapy or meds or anything like that.
And it must have been the 90s, right? Because now we're fast forwarding a little bit. Like, so you
Yeah.
said that 2002, so
Yeah, it'd
I
be
mean,
the late 90s.
I don't know that was like super common for.
It's not
kids,
as,
you know?
definitely not as prevalent as now. I mean, when Allan was 19, his parents divorced, and though, they're not together anymore, but they're still in agreement, he's behaving weird for both of them. So Allan and Thomas met and became best friends, because again, they're just kind of, they don't really have anybody else.
Yeah.
So Thomas knew that Allan, there was something a little different about him, but he's like, I'm a loner too. You like ferrets, I like ferrets.
That's right, I forgot.
Yeah. Let's ferret.
Yeah.
Is that, I don't know. Okay. So Thomas was cool with it. So one night when they're hanging out at Allan's house, Thomas suggested that they watch Queen of the Damned.
Okay, with Aaliyah.
Aaliyah.
I have not seen it, but is it not?
Came out posthumously. Woof. That was a tough word.
Because it's connected. It's actually a novel of the Anne Rice series, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Take it away, Jilli.
Go on.
No, yes. So it came out in 2002, so that year that we're the year that this happened didn't really do great at the box office, or critics didn't.
Like I
really
said,
like it very well.
I didn't see it.
I
saw an interview with the vampire.
Yeah. That's a tough act to follow. I think it was a great movie. Anyway, but Queen of the Damned, I saw. I don't remember how I felt about it. It was a very long time ago. But so Akasha, played by Aaliyah, is the queen, and basically her role is like she's the creator, I think, of the vampires in general. And
she's like the original.
Yeah, and so she can control any vampire and actually any human.
How?
Because
Okay, no, I don't know. Like, is it like
to do with
like hypnotism?
like the mechanics of it? I'm not super sure, but she got her powers from an Egyptian god
Okay.
because she was originally Egyptian.
Yeah, she's whenever if I think of like the cover, it's like her in like gold
Yes,
stuff. Yeah.
yeah. So Allan watched the movie and he was obsessed.
Okay.
And he went on to watch the movie over 100 times. He even had to replace the DVD because it was like worn out.
Okay.
And specifically, he was drawn to Akasha. She's obviously stunning. She's all powerful. And she can kind of control whether somebody lives or dies. Now, this is a kid who probably felt pretty ineffectual his whole life. Mm-hmm. And of course you're going to be like, whatever. I get it.
Well, okay. Weird kid to another weird kid. Like, yeah, if you're like nerdy, I don't know, you have like I still love Lara Croft. She's so cool, but
Right.
like I'm not Lara Croft.
You didn't watch the movie 100 times.
No.
So, well, and nor did you start telling people that you were going to be just like her.
No, but that would have been cool. But right, yeah.
Well, Allan did. Allan started telling his parents that vampires were in fact real and that he wanted to be one.
Okay.
What they did with that info, I'm not super sure.
Well, there's like a vampire community, but you're not like a. It's not a supernatural thing. You're part of a community.
I think
He wanted to be supernatural.
Yeah,
Okay.
like the actual what's the word when something's oh my god.
Validity, like
That's not when something's like true to the original story.
canon.
Canon. I think it was that he was like this is the way that it is.
Like there are vampires, there's real vampires, there's some lady out there who's the original
exists.
and okay.
Yes.
Okay.
He even brought home raw ox liver at one point to consume.
Do you get
A butcher.
you can get
Ox?
liver?
Oh yeah.
I don't know. I've never had liver.
You need
so.
to venture out
Have you
to
had
the meat
liver?
store. I've not eaten liver, no.
Okay.
But you
Weird.
can.
Okay.
You know, he just wanted to like dip his toe a little into the blood world. And according to Allan, Akasha actually began visiting him.
Oh no.
She told him that if he wanted to be a vampire and live forever, all he had to do was kill someone and drink their blood.
Okay. You gonna start
Duh.
with your friend though? There you
Well,
you can't
not
do it.
originally,
Okay.
but you'll find out why. So on the evening of December 11th, Thomas goes to Allan's house, and Allan suggests that they spend their time watching Queen of the Damned. And at this point, Thomas is like, I'm all set.
That's like if anyone goes to my house and they're like, "Do you want to watch Game of Thrones?" Like, I guess we have to.
So
it's on all the time, so okay. Anyway.
It's just in the background. That used to be me with New Girl. I mean, Alone, British Baking Show, any of them. Anyway.
But you wouldn't be like it, okay, it's on in the background, but you wouldn't be like, we're gonna watch
No.
season 1, episode 1.
Let's start from the beginning. So Thomas is like, I don't want to do this. And they go back and forth about it. And Thomas actually kind of starts making fun of the movie and Akasha.
Okay.
You know, vampires aren't real and all this jazz. So the fight escalated and Thomas went to leave. At this point, apparently, Akasha appeared to Allan and demanded he do something about it. Because it's disrespectful now. You're going to let him walk out the door after he's said all of this stuff to you.
Even though he said to the police it wasn't a big deal.
Exactly. And this is, you know, you want to become immortal anyway. You have to kill somebody. This is a perfect opportunity. So Allan gets to Thomas before he has a chance to leave the house, and he begins stabbing him. The total number of stab wounds was 42.
Wow.
During the stabbing, Thomas is actually able to get away, and he runs into Allan's room and tries to lock him out.
Hold on. Sorry. Does Allan live alone?
No, he lives with his... I think at this point he's living with his mother, but she must not be there.
Okay. It's nighttime, so...
Could be his dad, because at some point his father admits after the fact, like, oh, I mean, I saw a blood stain in his room, but he told me he cut himself.
Okay.
So he tries to lock Allan out of Allan's bedroom. Allan overtakes him, and he finds a hammer available to him, and he hits Thomas over the head 10 times. Thomas, at this point, has passed away, and Allan slits his throat and drains some of his blood into a cup and drinks it. Allan also removes part of Thomas's skull and consumes that too.
The skull, like the bone?
That's what they kept saying. everybody said skull. I'm like, how does one consume
Grind
skull?
it up and put it in a smoothie? I don't know. Okay, take that out.
Will not. So,
Skull. Is that just... Okay, this is... Like, is that like a Scottish kind of... You know how, like
oh, maybe.
Not slang, but like...
Well, I actually, the next line, I'm going to use a different slang. But
Okay.
Maybe, because you would think if it were brain, people would specifically say brain. But what else could you...
Maybe they didn't... I don't know.
Or like the scalp.
The skin, yeah, like
Yeah.
That's a morbid curiosity.
Wildly unpleasant.
Yeah.
Allan removed Thomas's body with the use of, they said, a wheelie bin, which I have learned is a wheelbarrow.
Okay.
And he brought it to some nearby woods where he dug a shallow grave and dropped him in.
Nearby, Allan.
Here's, I don't know what time of night this was, but imagine to yourself, if you will, you see somebody walking down the street with a wheelbarrow.
There wasn't like woods like in the back of his like house, right?
So it must have been fairly wooded around there. So I don't know how far he had to like, I don't know. So it's unclear if he went like through the backyard.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you would have been like, somebody would have called it out immediately. That weirdo was walking down the street with a wheelbarrow.
Huh. Okay.
At midnight. Then he goes back home and he attempted to clean up. And this is, like I say, after the fact, his dad did admit that he had spotted a blood stain on his bedroom floor. But Allan claimed he'd cut himself with a can.
Okay. But here's the thing.
Yes.
I imagine the blood stain is not... Even if you cut yourself with a can, depending on where, you're not even going to have a stain. It's probably...
You're talking about somebody who sustained 42 stab wounds.
Yeah.
And 10 hammer blows to the head.
Oh, yeah. There's going to be debris.
Spatter would be... I don't know where his parents were. Like, what...
We don't... Sorry, did you say what time of night?
No.
Okay, so I don't...
They also didn't specify. Because it was like, Thomas left his house in the, like, afternoon, evening.
Okay, but every time I leave my house and I come here, I'm not coming home until very early in the morning.
No. So, his dad believed him, like I said. Allan never seemed sorry for what he did. As a matter of fact, he felt that he had been successful. He told the police, yeah, I know I'm going to get jail time, but I got Thomas's soul.
Wow. Sorry, did you say how long they were friends for?
It seems to me that Thomas came into his life only in the last couple of years.
Okay, but that's still like it's not like you met somebody a week ago.
No, like he's a stranger.
Yeah.
So Allan and his lawyers hoped to claim diminished responsibility based on his mental health.
Does that... Okay, so I know Canada's a little bit easier to do that. Has Scotland.
So, in general, I'm not sure. It did not work at all.
Good.
In this, he was like, I'll plead guilty to culpable homicide, which is our equivalent to manslaughter. And
what?
The Crown was like, no.
That's not like, you know what, I was just swinging my hammer.
I know. There was no malice. I don't know what you're talking. I didn't mean anything by it.
Oh my god.
I know.
That's laughable. All right.
Now, to be fair, 3 different psychiatrists determined that even though he had some diagnoses, including antisocial personality disorder and possibly even paranoid schizophrenia, it did not cause him to have diminished responsibility. He knew enough at that point.
Yeah.
You know,
because you're also lying about it. So you know it's wrong.
Right.
If you didn't think it was wrong.
For
yeah.
weeks.
Yeah.
He was clearly found guilty of murder, and he received a life sentence at Shotts Prison in Edinburgh. But unfortunately, or fortunately, I guess, depending on how you feel about it. On the morning of November 15th, 2004, Allan was found dead in his cell, and he had hanged himself with his bed sheets.
I was going to say his pajamas, but...
Not his PJs this time. He was actually, like, in sort of solitary. I actually read a really interesting report on the inquiry they did about him killing himself, because he was on suicide watch. Like, he was high risk.
Yeah.
There was a lot of, nobody's really sure how it happened, and it was just very interesting.
Okay, aside, you can cut this out if you want. If someone's on suicide watch, bed sheets, obviously, are one of the...
know.
So, like, how do you just go, you have to be cold.
So, I know. I know. He was moved around a bunch because they were, like, determining his risk. He had just submitted a plea. Not a plea, I'm sorry. He had submitted an appeal. Oh my God. Words. He was in the process of, like, putting in for an appeal. So it's kind of, unless he just knew. He knew it wasn't going to work.
Yeah.
And somebody said in one of the documentaries I watched that, you know, if he really thought he was a vampire, he wouldn't have killed himself.
No, he couldn't live forever.
Don't you think that you would be like, let me give it a try?
To see if you were immortal or not?
Yeah. Like, if you really thought.
Maybe. Well, I don't know.
Because
I mean,
I guess, I don't know. Maybe if he was like,
what do you
if
have
I'm
to
not,
lose, I guess?
Right. Because if I'm not, then I don't want to do this anymore anyway.
Yeah. Like it was all a lie, and I don't know.
Or he actually didn't believe it at all. But
then why even, like, you're so obsessed with something.
Right.
You're going to commit murder because you're so mad that somebody dissed, like, your hobby or whatever.
Right.
Like,
where at most you could be like, we're not friends anymore.
Yeah.
Just don't come over.
Yeah.
He obviously had anger issues. I mean, he stabbed that kid.
Yeah.
8 years prior. And then sort of kept to himself. Almost like it was, he didn't really have an opportunity to hurt anybody else at that point.
True. Yeah, I didn't have friends.
But it's just...
And he didn't go back to school. He was in juvie. Or whatever the
Right,
equivalent
until
is.
he was 17.
Yeah.
And I guess at that point, you're done, mostly, right?
Yeah. I imagine.
Yeah. I don't know. So, people call this a vampire murder, which sort of... that really makes it... There's a vampire aspect to it. This is a mentally ill kid.
Yeah, I think it's too, like, sexy to be like, it's a vampire.
Yes.
No, he had issues. And think about the family of Tom. Like,
Right.
oh.
Well, and that was one of the things I found while I was doing the research is so much of it was focused on Allan. I really had to dig to find information about Thomas, and that sucks.
That's a bummer, yeah.
So that's why I wanted to start with Thomas. I felt like it's
his story.
The story was about him. So that was the story. That was one of my shortest ones ever. But I was kind of like looking for supernaturally things that also had a true crime aspect.
Poor Tom, though, because he's like, man, I have this one friend, and he's so weird.
And, right, he's being probably kind.
Yeah.
There were probably so many times he was like, I
can see why you're a loner.
Right.
Yeah.
And, yeah, it's just...
Bummer.
But, you know, I don't know what the positive is out of all this. There's nothing good.
I mean... Kind of makes me want to watch Queen of the Damned.
Right? I almost tried to
Just a
squeeze it
little
in
bit.
last night. I was like, maybe I could get it done beforehand. But
I think he'd want to murder us both. I don't think I'm going to like it.
I know, maybe we should do some edibles first.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't... Oh, it's something about... Oh, my God. That's right. Rock and roll. Lestat
Yeah.
goes like, I'm done for a couple 100 years. I don't want to be in this anymore.
Queen of the Damned was before. Isn't it a prequel? I thought. Maybe.
So he gets awakened by rock music.
Oh.
And
Okay. Huh.
something like that. I'm sorry for anybody whose favorite movie is Queen of the Damned. Please don't hurt me.
Well, interesting.
Yeah, it was he really did. You know, when you're really somebody's only friend, good luck not being immediately picked out as the potential
Yeah.
person that was, you know, I mean, where else did he go? She knew he was coming to see you. I don't know.
No,
It's just crazy.
Yeah.
It's a bummer. And weirdly, I didn't write too much down about it, so I don't want to misspeak, but one of the people who testified, who was like a former friend of Allan, said that he was fascinated by a kid who had murdered a woman in Wales earlier in 2002. A 90-year-old woman, he slit her throat, drank her blood, and cut her heart out. And he went to jail for life with a minimum of 12 years. So it's terrifying.
So he was just a ticking time bomb, pretty much. Like,
yes.
Tom didn't know.
No.
He was just trying to be nice. I mean, I don't know. Maybe he did enjoy his company a little bit, but it sucks because these kind of stories, because on the one hand, like, you know, in America with all the school shootings and all that stuff, part of your thing is to be like, ugh, like if you were just accepted in your own little community, maybe that wouldn't have happened. But on the other hand, there is this aspect that a lot of people are scared of, like, maybe you're alone because of a certain reason.
Right.
So you don't want to be like an asshole, but you also, you want to like protect yourself too.
Right.
So it's like, are you preventing something from worse happening, or are you like, I don't know, are you putting yourself in danger? Like, no one else is going to be their friend. You have to be their friend. And
right. Well, and what I wish anybody could vocalize is what Thomas thought of their friendship.
Yeah.
Did he talk about this all the time? Like, is that all he spoke about? Did you guys do normal things? Like, was this a normal friendship for the most part? And then every now and then he made you watch this movie?
Yeah, because that would make more sense if you were just like, they're just quirky about
Right.
vampires or whatever. But yeah.
It'd be just fascinating to hear that aspect of it. To just be like, what was this kid like? Because his parents would say, like, you could hear him in his room. The volume on the movie would be up really loud. And, like, he'd be yelling. And I mean, listen, I know she says she talked to her doctor. I don't know. It just feels
I think
like,
we know a lot more now.
yes.
So the warning signs may have been picked up. Or a different course would have been taken, I guess.
Yes.
Like after maybe the stabbing. Or even before the stabbing of the high school or whatever, when he was 14.
When he was being bullied and...
Right, and that's an issue too. So
Yes.
it's like when did it start? Was he like this little weirdo, or did, you know, the consequence of him stabbing that kid in school, and like she said, he was different when he came out of Dewey, which I feel like everybody would be, but maybe it like you said, it was a punishment. It was not like,
yes,
let's talk about this, like what happened that day, and that's a bummer too. Is juvie like that here? Like, is it just a punishment? Do they ever work with...
I believe that there are portions of it that involve therapy.
I hope so.
Because
they're so young.
Well, and it's like we talked about in the asylum episode. You start institutionalizing these kids from 14 years old.
Yeah.
That does something to somebody.
I think it would do something to even the healthiest person.
Yes,
yeah.
and to adult human beings who are not suffering from unknown. And again, that is never, ever to say poor Allan Menzies.
No, it's just how it's more of a commentary about like how to prevent stuff like that. Because everyone involved is human. So you would like to think that probably like 99% of people are not. I know you said he had antisocial personality,
disorder.
but was that after he came out of juvie, or
Right.
did he always have that? Like, I think for the most part, there's got to be some way to get through before it's too late, but I don't know. Hopefully we just learn from stuff like that.
Yeah.
I don't know what could have been, we don't know. We don't know what
you
their
could've-
parents went through. And
You can talk about hindsight all day long, and it's not gonna...
Interesting.
Both families are now down a son.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the long and short of it. So
Wow. I didn't even think of it that way, but yeah.
So, starting off the day strong with a bummer of a story. But
Yeah.
I did want to, go back to true crime for a little bit, and but also have little vampire action in there, I guess. But yeah, maybe we'll have to watch Queen of the
Damned.
Bring back some memories. All right. Well,
All right.
thank you so much.
Yes. Good job.
Thanks. Bye, guys. Thanks for listening to Relatively Weird. If you like what you hear, make sure to leave us a review and follow us on your podcast player of choice. You can also find us at Relatively Weird the Pod on Instagram. If you have any stories you'd like us to talk about, send us an email at relatively weirdthepod@gmail.com. See you next week.